I'm gonna have to edit my own rambling, which is always hard.
No, but that's always true. You always edit your own rambling.
Yeah, which is always hard.
You have to edit mine too, I'm sorry. Okay. We have to introduce ourselves again? Do it.
Hello, I am Mikalia. I'm from Singapore.
Welcome to this video.
Yeah.
Hi,
What
welcome
are
to
you
this
doing?
video.
Hey guys, welcome back. Thanks so much for being on Mikalia's YouTube channel. Today we're going to talk about who MINERVA's for and how education differs from other prestigious universities.
I think that was great. I think I'll just use that.
Sounds good. Let's get into it.
I'm Mikalia. We're both currently sophomores at MINERVA University, doing our semester in Taipei, and we'll be going to Korea in a couple of weeks, which is really exciting. I did 1 year at the National University of Singapore before coming to MINERVA. I'm from Singapore.
I think they got that. Hello, my name is Megan. I'm from the States, specifically Kentucky. I attended Cornell for 1 year before coming to MINERVA, and yeah, I'm super excited to be here and also be in Taipei studying abroad with all of my lovely friends from MINERVA.
So, who is this video primarily for? Establish your hashtag audience.
People who are considering MINERVA. It's also perhaps for people who are considering MINERVA as compared to other like prestigious, like conventionally top institutions.
Or if you're just more curious about how MINERVA works, this video is for you.
So how would you compare the academic experience between the schools you were at versus MINERVA?
MINERVA is like phenomenally better compared to what I experienced. Personally, it was better than I reasonably expected that it could be. First of all, I think the educational pedagogy just makes a lot more sense. And second, structure of the courses also make a lot more sense. And third, the people in the community are just so much better to learn from. They're like really inspiring people that motivate you to be better. And anyways, I just felt like I was surrounded by people who just wanted a degree and to leave as soon as possible.
From my perspective, MINERVA's kind of on par, but I'm studying business, and I am very grateful for the cornerstones because I didn't have that base education. Like learning Python, something I would have never done. I was homeschooled for high school, whereas I went straight into my major at Cornell, so that is a significant difference. I would prefer the education at Cornell. I think in-person learning is really important, and if this is something that is on your priority list, it's something to reflect on for sure. In-person learning facilitates a better connection with your professors, with your classmates, and can also lead to better focus, especially in a constantly more digital world that we live in with distractions. Sitting down for a lecture can be beneficial. However, as we know, so many studies have shown that lectures are not an effective way to learn, and MINERVA objectively does not lecture you. You are constantly drilled on what you're learning, and you're expected to do pre-class work before your class to understand what's going on. So I think as a broad blanket statement, MINERVA is better. If you're going to an elite institution in the United States, in-person classes, and they have flipped classrooms now, so something very similar, are better than MINERVA's education.
What type of person is MINERVA for? This is a very frequently asked question from all like incoming students or applicants. Describe the vibe. What's the aura?
You can also say who MINERVA's not for.
Or who MINERVA's not for. That's probably easier to answer.
MINERVA is definitely not for people that have a very clear vocation in mind. Like if you want to be a doctor or an engineer, it makes zero sense to come to MINERVA because you're gonna spend most of the time learning stuff that is not like you don't need to know. Like MINERVA is also objectively very difficult.
If you want to ultimately go to a university and get your degree and get out, MINERVA's not for you.
Yeah, MINERVA's the much harder way to do that.
Also, if you want to graduate early, MINERVA's not for you. You must go through a 4-year program, so it's not an option to get out early. From a financial perspective, it varies. Sometimes MINERVA gives really good financial aid, other times they don't, so on that one, can't really answer. A lot of people think that they want to go to MINERVA because they just want to travel around the world. Would not recommend travel on your summers because you're going to study. You have to prioritize your education, and you can't miss classes. It's not like other universities where you can skip however many lectures you want. If you skip too many lectures, you will not pass your year.
MINERVA is also not for people who have like a startup or something on the side. Actually, I guess there are a lot of people.
A lot of people do that.
A lot of people do, but like it's a really hard way to do it. It's like if you like focus on like doing something outside of school, like there's a genre of people in NUS who say school is my hobby, my real thing is what I do, like my internship or something.
I'm gonna interrupt this because as someone in the startup space, MINERVA is very well known, and it helps you get into the startup space a lot faster, and you get a lot of connections to the startup space. So if you want to run a startup, Minerva is a great place to go by virtue of connections to VCs and founders.
But it's not because you have time to work on it. Because Minerva takes a lot of time.
But I think this is a plus. If you want to be pushed to manage your time, and you want to be pushed to figure out what you want, Minerva is a really great space to do so. And also on the travel side of things, the large reason why I came to Minerva was to travel. I'm one of those people that everyone's like, oh my gosh, people shouldn't go to Minerva, I just want to travel. But I did knowing I wanted a good education, and I think that that's a really big difference. Like, I'm prepared to invest time and energy into my education, and if I'm not going somewhere every weekend, it's not the end of the world. So I think, like, the original question that we kind of backtracked from was, like, who is Minerva for? And I would say Minerva is for highly motivated individuals who either A, do not have access to a different who do not have access to a different, like, education within the US, or B, who want to be pushed to really experience the world through a variety of lenses, whether or not it be, like, different people from socioeconomic backgrounds, from different geographic backgrounds, and also from, I think we have a pretty good plethora, excluding, like, engineers and doctors, of interest-based.
Yeah.
So it's very diverse. And, like, I think so many universities say, like, oh my gosh, we're so diverse, like, half of our student body is, like, from a different country or something. But Minerva is objectively, I think, probably the most diverse university
it's like Minerva puts every other university, like, diversity, like, thing, like, to shame. Like, it's actually insane.
Both from, like, also, I feel like I went at Cornell being a very, like, low income, like, I didn't have a high income comparatively speaking, versus I think this is a much more accurate representation of the way that the world is in regards to, like, I'm on the upper income spectrum, also because I'm an American, but I think it gives you a lot more, like, humility when it comes to recognizing people's different backgrounds and limitations.
Minerva made me feel like a global citizen.
Okay, how do small class sizes help with the mixture of mingling of people? In Cornell, you were kind of, like, segregated by class a little bit, right? Yeah, so Minerva doesn't have that, and how does having such a small class size, or, like, being assigned roommates or things like that, does that help? Does Minerva do a good job in at least attempting to mix people together?
Yes, but people naturally group together. And especially when you have a lot of, like, the Egyptians, for example. They have, like, 20 of them. Okay, I also think that I don't have as great of a capacity to answer this, and I think you probably will give a better answer because I was part of a really small community within a larger community at Cornell. Like, I think my class size was very similar to Minerva, given everyone was studying what I was studying, but, so it doesn't feel very different to me.
I was in the program at NUS with, like, 2,000 people per the program, and the class sizes, I think, were something like 20, but it really didn't feel like it mattered. Like, there could have been 50 people in that classroom. It wouldn't really have made a difference because the discussions that came out of those were almost never really useful. So I don't really think it matters. A lot of courses had the structure of lecture, every week you have one lecture and one tutorial, and the tutorial meant to be like Minerva, like it's more like discussion, you get prompted by the facilitator. But the thing is that those discussions were never really facilitated very well, which is why I was saying earlier that, like, you can be a really passionate teacher, but you might not necessarily be good at facilitating. And, like, I felt like most people would, like, use the discussion to just, like, make a point to, like, get their class participation points, and it might not even be a good point, but they're not scored on how good their point was, they're scored on the fact that they participated.
That's fair. I mean, like, back to your question, I think you mean, like, how well does Minerva facilitate mixing our diverse community? And I think that they do it pretty well, but I think it's also inherently from the people who choose to go to Minerva.
Yeah.
We're all wanting this experience. Like, we all signed up for it. So, naturally, we want to get to know
Well, vast
a lot
majority.
of people. Not everyone, but
Vast majority. Maybe like 90%.
people are very motivated, I think. And I think we're also a very extroverted school, for the most part.
That's true. You have to be pretty extroverted to come to Minerva because of the fact that you're constantly moving. You have to be pretty on your toes as a person, you know?
And I think this is one other key distinction to kind of add to the previous part. You don't go to Minerva if you want to focus on academics, because if you go to a really great institution, or maybe not even a high ranking one, but just one that's quite supportive, you'll have housing taken care of, you'll have food taken care of, you'll be able to walk around campus, so you don't have to worry about commuting, and you just don't have those things necessarily, like housing kind of, but you don't really have that level of support to only focus on academics.
I would personally say that I am quite focused on academics. Like, I think that my main thing of Minerva is to expand my brain and to learn a lot.
But you have to live.
But imagine a world in which you didn't have to think about what you were eating, where you were living, or where you needed to go in a day because it was all in a little quadrant around you.
Yeah, but I think the difference with me is that I wanted to focus on academics while also, like, experiencing the world.
Yeah, but then you are making time for two things, and objectively, it's harder to make time for two things than it is for one.
Do you want to summarize, like, a persona of who Minerva is?
Probably it's ADHD.
That's true, though.
A little bit neurodivergent. No, but it's like whenever they ask these questions, like admissions people are always like, it's for go-getters, and they're really motivated and passionate, but it's true.
No, Minerva is for someone who wants to pave their own path. You have to be prepared to pave your own path, to get where you want to go without people helping you. And that sounds like, oh, so nice, like, I'm so motivated or whatever. But, like, genuinely, you will not have access to the same things that you get at a big institution. And I think at the end of the day, it will make us all better people in the long run, but we won't see that result for quite a long time. And you need to be prepared for the reality that you have to try continuously, very hard, for 4 years to get where you want to go.
What my professor said, and I don't know what you guys feel about this, he also taught at Harvard, and he said that Minerva students are like Harvard students but with an exclamation mark. Basically he thinks that we're more
okay, but this is one thing. People are like, oh my goodness, Minerva students are at the caliber of Ivy Leagues, and I disagree. I don't think they are, and I think that's fine. But like, a lot of people come into Minerva needing to learn a lot to get to that point, and I would say by the time that they graduate, they're at the caliber, but I wouldn't say that the majority of our student body is at the caliber.
Not the majority, but a good portion.
A good portion. Like, I'll give you 50%. But
I don't think it's more than I thought.
You know, we can argue with the number, it doesn't matter.
You know what I mean, though?
Yeah.
Maybe like 30.
You can think of a percentage of our class who ultimately performs at that level that you would expect of an Ivy League student. But there's a lot of students who don't, I don't think. Yeah.
There's a lot who don't.
And they receive this praise, like, as if we are as good. And we are, and that's okay.
Okay, any regrets of going to Minerva?
No.
No?
I kind of knew that would be the spot, just like no, straightforward.
Simple answer. Minerva wants to change the future of higher education. Do you think it's doing that?
I don't think it needs to. And I don't think it can.
Wait, what do you mean by that?
Okay, first of all, I don't think it needs to because it's operating in an environment that's run by these giant prestigious universities who have the power to change education and who are objectively choosing not to. Who have the power, for example, like, I forget the statistics, but like Harvard, they have their endowment, right? And their endowment grows year over year. Do you want to know it doesn't? Their student body. They have the power to educate more people and provide a better education for more people, and they are choosing not to. I don't think this is Minerva's responsibility. I think it is the responsibility of these giant prestigious universities who choose not to educate more people, who choose not to give a better education, all because they want to remain elitist and prestigious. And as far as like Minerva changing the future of higher ed, I think it's a really nice catchline, but I think that's not what Minerva exists for. I think Minerva should remain small. I think it should remain providing the education that it has set out to do so, and it should educate between 100 and 300 students every year to the best of its ability to make them whatever they want to call global citizens. And they're changing higher ed in this regard, but I think that their responsibility is to produce these 100 to 300 students to be the best possible, like, examples of what higher ed can be for a better world. But I don't think that they are capable of changing the entirety of higher ed, and I don't think that they should.
I think that Minerva is a step in the right direction. I totally see a future in which, like, there was, like, a history textbook being like, oh, learning used to be a lot like this, and then there were a couple of efforts that tried to dismantle this very illogical system of education that we had in the 21st century. One notable example of this is, like, the effort of Minerva University. I see that possibly happening. I don't know if Minerva is going to be, like, the thing, but I think it'll be part of a wider movement, and part of the spearheaders of that movement. Catalyst of that movement. It's one of like the little meteors in the right direction. Because I think that a lot of what Minerva is doing makes sense to address the issues of higher education that I experienced.
Yeah, I mean, but they're supposed to be like this new American institution fixing, I mean, a world in which American institutions are viewed as the best in many ways, right? So I think, like, in this regard, it's a good example of how higher education can be different and can be better, but there just needs to be larger change.
It's like, I don't know if Minerva is going to expand minimum wage world, but I think that, like, other institutions will look at it and see the parts of it that make sense and, like, reform, you know.
I don't know, I'm kind of doubtful. I don't have an optimistic view on the future. There's no incentive for these big institutions to change the way that they're doing things, so why would they?
Cool. Do you guys want to end the video?
Was that it?
I basically said you should go to Minerva if you want your life to be difficult.
That's what I always say too!
No, but that's true.
But
that's very honest.
No, you should go to Minerva if you want your life to be difficult, but it's very rewarding. Like, at the end of the day.
High risk, high reward.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, objectively, at the end of every semester, I look back at what I did, and I'm like, wow, I couldn't have imagined I would accomplish this much in, like, 2 years, and I just did it in 3 months.
Yeah, it's like, do you want the booster pack of things being handed to you, or do you want to work really hard for 4 years and maybe get a lot of things handed to you? You know?
I think that Minerva is kind of a booster pack and that it makes me sign up for a lot more things than I would have otherwise, because I'm always like, oh, I'm gonna leave in 3 months if I have to do this, like, now and here.
But you don't get sports teams. It's
Yeah,
very
that
sad.
sucks.
It really sucks.
Oh, I'm fine with that.
I'm sad.
I think there needs to be a separate video on comparing Asian top education versus American top education, because the two of you seem to not understand each other's education systems, and I'm sitting here like, wait, you guys didn't know that?
Did you know that?
No, what?
Like, the whole, like, a lot of memorization, not active learning versus, like, flipped classroom model, like...
But it also depends. Like, I think this is something that maybe I didn't make clear enough, but my experience is within business, and specifically within, like, the hotel school at Cornell, which is very different. It is small class structure, flipped classrooms, much more innovative because they have a lot more agency, versus with engineering, it's obviously much more memorization, all this stuff you have going on. So...
Yeah, it's like what I was experiencing. It feels kind of like what I experienced at NUS in Columbia.
Columbia has some flipped classroom things, I know that.
Yeah.
But probably not for, like, CS or STEM.
Yeah, but, like, there are echoes in it.
Yeah.
I do feel like a lot of the structures of higher education just don't make sense. Like, Minerva's whole pitch of, like, you're paying $80K a year for, like, professors that, like, if you're lucky, they care. If you're unlucky, they don't. You're paying for, like, to support, like, sports teams that you might not be on. You're paying, like, all these infrastructure that for a building that you might not even, like, physically enter.
I think that's a weird point.
That's a very strange point.
Yeah.
I think, like, the infrastructure makes sense. Like, you have access to all this infrastructure, you have all the support, but the one thing that we feel like you should emphasize is, like, Minerva's by no means perfect. Like, at all. By no means
Very
is it
far
perfect.
from it.
The best part of Minerva, though, is the people, I would say. And I think, like, this is a commonality across classes, across everyone I've talked to, like, you love Minerva because you love the people and because everyone is so motivated. And if you want to be in that motivated of an environment and you want to, like, really push for what you want for your future, Minerva's a really great place to be.
The whole, like, moving countries thing is a big part of Minerva. Because I remember that when I was trying to decide if I should leave NUS for Minerva, and I was honestly extremely skeptical that the education was as good as they were saying, to which I was very surprised that it was much better than I thought it would be. I thought that, like, okay, the school can make as many empty promises as they want about, like, how good their education is, how good their student body is, and whatever. What they are objectively not lying about is the fact that you go to a different country every semester. And I think that if this school brings me to a different country every semester, and I still feel like I learned nothing from my university experience, and that is my own fault at that point. I was just thinking that there is no way I could be living in all these places and not have my brain expand.
No, I completely agree. Like, if everything else fails, at least we get to live in all these
if everything
countries.
else fails, you live in all these places, and there's just so many things that you can do from being in these places. And, like, I guess Minerva connects you, like, reasonably well with the locals. Like, it gives you, like, some, like, unique opportunities that you wouldn't get just from, like, living there. It also kind of empowers you to do things, like the environment, like there's surrounded by people who are just like, yeah, just go do that thing, and you're like, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I have the exact same train of thought.
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay, now we should go to class.
Okay, let's say bye.
Thank you for watching.
Thanks.
Yay! Oh, if you want, do you want to
Oh
leave
yeah,
your contact?
LinkedIn contact.
If you want to contact Megan, it will be floating here. If you want to contact me, it will be floating somewhere here. And if you have not, you should go watch the first part of this video where we talked about why we left NUS and Cornell.
Woo!
You can also watch my very long, half-hour-long video about why I left NUS. That's
Actually,
And my like half-hour-long video on the good, the bad, and the ugly of Minerva.
Yay!
Yay!
I still haven't watched that actually.
Bye!